As I told you at the top of the program today, there is a new person to blame for Trump's legal woes. It is the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. The Washington Post has a big piece today where they're in the voice of God blaming Tom Fitton and also relying on anonymous Trump sources, people around Trump, I guess, who suggest that Tom Fitton is the one who's been urging Trump to fight back against the Biden Justice Department's aggression. And they say that's a bad idea. And Tom should have never said that, and Trump should have never listened to him, and on and on and on. Well, let's talk to the guy himself. Tom can explain what exactly happened here and why everyone's attacking him today. Tom Fitton, good to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, it's outrageous, but I can't help but laugh as you describe it because it's also obviously silly.
Isn't it wild? So what I'm seeing today is this Washington Post piece. I read from it extensively at the top of the show. But they're saying that you advised him.
I want to go on the record. Hold on. I want to go on the record.
Okay.
The filet was delicious.
Was it? Yes. It says here that you had filet mignon with him on Monday night.
I did have that piece of steak, and it was great.
It was good. Is it really? Did they dry age the steaks at Mar-a-Lago?
Oh, was that the Trump Doral?
Trump Doral.
I don't know. Yeah. It was down in Miami.
How do you take it?
I like it medium, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it was cooked well. I didn't have to send it back or anything.
All right. So, what are your thoughts on all this then? All this coverage of you today?
Well, the less substantive part of the story, I really don't understand what it's about because there's this theory that Trump didn't cooperate, right? And he did cooperate. He turned over those boxes that under, I would say, the law, he didn't have to. And then they got the subpoena, and they turned over a batch of classified records after doing what they thought was a sufficient search. Mm-hmm. Now, the government alleges that search wasn't sufficient, but I don't think it credibly alleges it or persuasively. So where's the lack of cooperation? The President of the United States had every right under the law to keep these records. You know, we've highlighted that publicly. I'm not going to get into any specific things I may have said to him. You know, but it's all really a kind of a theory that is lacking in any reality in the sense that Trump Trump fully cooperated. I mean, he had the head of the counterintelligence, the intelligence section of the Justice Department in his home saying, you know, tell us what you want, we'll get it for you. Mm-hmm. It's absurd. Look, the archives went and harassed them on these documents. They had really no basis to do so. You know, his instinct was, well, what are they doing here, right? And so, but in the end, he gave them a bunch of documents. And then they found allegedly classified material or material that was more classified. And that was the hook then that the Justice Department, with the permission of the Biden White House, used to pressure him with a subpoena. He gave them the documents subject to the subpoena, and then they concocted an obstruction charge. Well, frankly, they concocted an excuse to raid his home over the objections of the FBI, as reported by the Washington Post previously. And now we're with this scam indictment. And you know, and of course the big case is the Clinton sock drawer case, right? So that story and all this news about Tom Fitton said this and that, which, you know, you can imagine when I think about all of that in terms of its relation to reality, it's about undermining the president's number one defense, and the defense that could exonerate him.
Yep.
That he had every right under the Constitution and the law, whether it be the Presidential Records Act or the Espionage Act, to keep this information.
So given the organization that you run, Judicial Watch, obviously you constantly are interfacing with the law and trying to get secrets out of the government to the American people. So you're familiar in that way. You've never been shy about the fact that you're not a trained lawyer. You say that on a frequent basis, actually. Although I do notice that today there's all sorts of people online who are saying that Tom Fitton's not a lawyer and Trump was listening to him. But one of the things that is probably worth mentioning about all of this is that you employ lawyers at Judicial Watch, and they are the very people who are saying the same thing that you are about the precedent here when it comes to presidential records, correct?
That's right. My colleague, senior attorney Michael Pekesha, who litigated the sock drawer case on the Clinton issue, you know, he had a piece in the Wall Street Journal, I'm sure you've already covered, describing the case, describing the precedent, and describing, you know, and I'll further describe As soon as we found out early last year that Trump turned records over under the Presidential Records Act to the archives, we immediately said, well, what's going on here? We lost this Clinton case because they couldn't get records after a president left office. Well, I guess the rules changed for Trump, and that was the whole issue. And obviously, based on what we've been saying publicly, and Trump was according to these advisors, upset that he was being pursued on this issue, even though he arguably had a right for them to these records. But despite that, he complied with the subpoena. So I don't know what all the noise is about, other than trying to undermine his key defense.
So what is happening around him, though? So the Washington Post credits or sources this to Trump advisors who are blaming you. Let me just read the sentence. Several other Trump advisors blamed Fitton for convincing Trump that he could keep the documents, and repeatedly mentioning the Clinton Socks case, which you just talked about, a reference to tapes Bill Clinton stored in his sock drawer of his secret interviews with historian Taylor Branch. They go on to describe what happened in the lawsuit. But they say that they frame this as there are people around Trump who are angry with you for telling him about this case.
This is the theory of the case. The the Biden administration abused Trump, and Trump deserved it because he complained about Biden administration abuse. It's kind of the circular logic. I don't understand it. I mean, the president, President Trump the other night made a speech highlighting his rights to keep documents under the sock drawer case.
Yeah.
Is that my fault too? I mean, it's absurd. I mean, these are advisors who, and by the way, this story already was largely reported last year. I mean, there's a reason I was before the grand jury on this issue. I told the grand jury what happened, yet they went after Trump anyway. I mean, all I can confirm is that Jack Smith knows that Trump is innocent. He had good reason to have these records to begin with. This subpoena that they issued to him was harassment. The raid was harassment. All of this was, frankly, a political attack on him. And Smith should be questioned under oath on why he did this in these circumstances, given all the evidence he has that is exculpatory to President Trump.
Right, and there's all sorts of questions about the Justice Department's behavior here. You referenced the fact that Trump was being cooperative, and you have FBI officials who think that it is out of control, that there was an FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, and that they should have just asked Trump for more cooperation. A. B, you are seeing that as a part of this prosecution, that attorney-client privilege has been breached because they say that there's some sort of underlying criminal conduct that justifies not allowing Donald Trump to have basically secret advice, as everyone's entitled to, from their attorney. And then lastly, that at least on top of my mind, is his co-defendant, his body man, Walter Nauta, I'm not sure how to say his name. He is an attorney who apparently was threatened by the Justice Department, and they said that his judicial application to join the D.C. Superior Court judgeship might be considered more favorably if he and his client cooperated against Trump. That strikes me as a gross violation of the law. But what's going on here with the prosecution side of the case?
Yeah, that's prosecutorial abuse, and I know I testified before the jury. They asked me a series of questions designed to scare me from talking about this case and this grand jury appearance, even though I had every right to do so. They tried to get me to swear under oath I wouldn't, and only because I pushed back did they say, oh, well, I guess you can talk if you want. I saw the abuse up front. I saw the politics up front. So when folks, buy into whatever spin whoever is purporting to be a Trump advisor, I mean, certainly no lawyer who gave him advice is talking to the Washington Post unless they're, criminals. So I just don't believe that. But there are advisors out there who presumably are talking to the Washington Post who don't understand what the issue is. The issue is the president was abused, and rather than attack the basis for his concern, they which is the Justice Department's abuse, they pretend that, he should have fully cooperated, which again harms the president in the sense that it suggests that he did something wrong when he didn't. What did he do wrong?
So,
and I know you're not going to answer that, but the point is, what did he do wrong? Look at the indictment. What did he do wrong? Move boxes around his office? Joke with his lawyers about whether he needed to turn every document over? Come on. So national defense information, he's commander in chief. How can he not authorize the release of information to himself? The law kind of turns in on itself when you apply it to him. The indictment itself, Vince, it talks about him putting these records in his personal boxes. He did what he was allowed to do under the law. What an abuse. So what would the Washington Post rather talk about?
Yeah.
What I told him and what he complained about during this process.
But somebody's using the Washington Post here, obviously, to advance an agenda. I don't know if this is about trying to do blame shifting or something. They want to stick you with this. I don't know what it is. But since this Washington Post piece was published, have you spoken to Donald Trump again? Do you get the sense that you're on the outs or anything? What kind of maneuvering's happening?
Oh, well, unlike those who talk to the Washington Post, I typically don't talk about whether or not I talk to Trump and what I've said to him. I just can't imagine this is taken seriously by anyone on Trump's team. Mm-hmm. And what's sad about it is you have the anti-Trumpers, obviously, in the Justice Department who want to see Trump lose. That's why they're trying to jail him. But then you have folks associated with his opposing campaigns who, for whatever reason, think this is an opportunity to attack Trump while neglecting to protect the rule of law that is being assaulted by this attack on Trump. It's just, it's a terrible situation for the country because we need someone standing for the rule of law. This isn't because I'm for or against a particular candidate. Trump's being abused. He's a crime victim. And I just wish every person running for office and all politicians understood that and stood against it. Instead, we're having people of various political loyalties, both Republican and Democrat, trying to take advantage of this abuse for their own purposes.
Right, and not seeing clearly what's going on here. Okay, Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, thank you for joining us today to give us some sense of what's happening here. I always appreciate your time, sir.